Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. We've just finished a Betfred shoot and I'm back here to shoot some of my thoughts onto the one Leeds stratosphere. What's going on in your world? Let me know in the comment section below. We're back tonight from 7 with the debrief on Paddy's Day. Shout out to all the Irish followers of one Leeds. I hope you're having a great day. I'm sure there's going to be some heads tomorrow which are a little bit on Mars. The Guinness over there is pure and fantastic, so I might even treat myself to one. Who knows? Maybe I'll go back now and just have a little Guinness. Who knows? But I just wanted to say hello to everybody and hello to all the new subscribers as well. We've hit 42,500 over the weekend. The second channel's hit 4,100, I think it is, which is great news. Thank you so much. Head on over to the second channel for some bonus bits during this break as well. We've got some things coming for you in person as well, which I think you're going to enjoy. But I wanted to speak today about Daniel Farke. I wanted to speak today about the next step in Leeds United's progression. I wanted to really hyper-analyse and hyper-focus on Daniel Farke's words post-match after the 2-2 draw against QPR. I'm going to speak about this tonight. We've got a couple of guests coming on the debrief, so make sure you're there, clocking in. But in particular, what I wanted to focus on was what Farke was saying about the tactical side of things and what he's going to do. There's a lot of people talking about Willian Jonto, there's a lot of people talking about Brendan Aronson, Elia Gruev, and of course, Joe Rothwell. Now, the reason it's Joe Rothwell is because I don't think he's ever going to drop out Tanaka, even though in my opinion, I think there's a conversation about Joe Rothwell actually being better than the Japanese superstar in the last 4 or 5 games when they've both featured for 90 minutes. I think Rothwell's been really good. I think you look at all of his completion, he had more touches in the opposition third at the weekend than Tanaka. He had more completed passes. His passing accuracy was better. I thought he was better overall in getting Leeds further forward as well. But it's interesting. Daniel Farke post-match, in my opinion, came out as a little bit cautious, and I've been looking at his discussion points, and he was effectively saying that in that game he wanted to play Elia Gruev, or he was wrestling with playing Elia Gruev, and that would have facilitated him to play Willian Jonto. Now, fortune favours the brave, doesn't it? You know, the risk, is it worth the reward? And sometimes I understand Farke prioritises control. You can see that in Leeds, how we build up, how we are out of possession. You can see basically that he prioritises control. He'd rather do that instead of risk. And I do like that to an extent, of course I do, but with the second half of the season has changed Leeds' style of play a little bit, and it's turned Leeds onto a little bit more of an aggressive side, wrestling the ball back in the opposition third, pushing the wingers higher, and I think that's really aided Leeds, and that is risk worth. I think my worry is that he thinks, maybe he's got something in his head a little bit, that Gruev has to be in there if Jonto is to start. Now, I think it's criminally underrated Joe Rothwell as an overall package. I think Tanaka's a bit underrated as well as a package in terms of defensive work. I think Rothwell is massively, his defensive work in central midfield has been really good in my opinion. He's combative, he's got a good duel rate, and so is our Tanaka. Tanaka's very, very underrated in just getting his foot in and intercepting the opposition. Now, I want to see Rothwell, I want to see Tanaka, and I want to see Jonto, but it doesn't feel like the manager's going to do this. That is my major worry, and that stinks of the handbrake being on a little bit and the control element, albeit you want to win games, we all know this. You want to win games, you don't want to lose games, but there's being pragmatic in game, there's changing it up in game. You know, you look at his time at Norwich, Daniel Farke, he was heavily criticised for not making at points via the Norwich fan base, of which I know a fair few of them. He was criticised for not making subs at the right times and the changes when it was going against the grain at the right time. Now, it's not going against the grain with Leeds United. We're on 80 points, we're top of the table, but, you know, the context applied is we've picked up 5 points in 12 games. You know, we've picked up, 5 points in our last 4 matches, which is definitely below our normal standard, and by Leeds United's standards, it could be deemed a mini crisis for what we've set ourselves this season. So, for me, the big worry in a sense, and I think we'll be okay, I still think Leeds United will get promoted, that's my genuine thoughts, but I think the overarching concern I have is that Daniel Farke seems in his post-match press conference that I've really sort of looked at today, and all the words that he was using, and almost Gruev having to be in there to facilitate Willian Jonso. In that second half, I know game state was a thing, but I thought Leeds looked excellent. There was Rothwell breaking forward, there was Tanaka being that covering midfielder whenever Rothwell was breaking forward. I think there's an overemphasis, an overzealous, in my opinion, belief that if you get an attacking player starting, you have to have a pivot, and the balance is nice. But when you've got two all-rounders in Joe Rothwell and Tanaka who can do a bit of both of everything, I think you've won, really. And Rothwell gets into, I think, every other championship midfield in the division, personally. I think Tanaka does the exact same thing. I don't think Gruev gets into, I think there's an argument that he doesn't get into the top, maybe sixth place midfield. Maybe that's what it is. But he's a very limited footballer. So my worry is now that Farke is very much going to go with the approach of, okay, well, that's fine if I do start an Onto, but if I do start an Onto, I'm going to take an attacking, more complete midfielder out of that section. That's my major worry, because I think then Leeds are going to start going to a point of view of which you're going to start seeing Willian Jonso in the 10 and then Gruev in the midfield for large portions of the season remaining. Obviously the last 8 games, if he does start every game in Onto, which we all want him to do, you're not going to see Joe Rothwell again, because Tanaka's the favoured son by many Leeds fans, and you're not going to see Rothwell again. So that is my major worry going into these last 8 games, and this is where, like, the manager's got to adapt, but he's got to be less cautious, and I'm hoping I'm wrong with this. I am, as I've said at the start, hyper-analysing what he said in terms of what he would do change-wise, but this is very much of the Daniel Farke blueprint, that obviously with risk comes reward. But to get to that risk, you have to put the blueprint. Yes, lad. One Leeds, good lad. But it's one of those where he's thrown me off there. You don't get many one Leeds in Manchester, but that is just my slight worry. And look, as I said multiple times, I think we'll win it. I do think we'll win it. I'm going to stick my neck out. I've said it for about 3 months now. I do think we'll win it. But my worry is if he kills that midfield by putting Gruev in, Leeds are going to look a lot less proactive at home. And I think we're going to produce a lot less in that midfield. And I think you actually clip the legs off Nonso, like you clip the legs off Aronson, I think, when there's a more defensive body in there, because the more proactive double pivot player opens up space for the attacking midfielder. So why would you do that? Why would you do that and clip the heels off Willian Jonso? You know, Rothwell can aid Willian Jonso. Go for it, Daniel. Go for it. We've got more than enough. I don't want to be worried about, Swansea. I don't want to be worried about Oxford. I don't want to be worried about these teams. I want to be going into these 8 games knowing that we've got more than enough going forward. Attack is the best form of defence. It always has been with Leeds United. It always has been. George Graham, maybe it was a little bit different in the early 90s or sort of mid-90s, but aside from that, attack has always been the blueprint of this football club. And right now, when you've got all the artillery that Leeds United have got, you've got to go for it, Daniel. That is my message. And look, I'm not a football coach, but Joe Rothwell is a well-rounded midfielder. Al Tanaka is a well-rounded midfielder. And Willian Jonso does a lot more pressing than I think a lot of people think. And at long last, there seems to be this realisation now that Willian Jonso can play in the number 10. But Ramazani has to get more minutes. We all know this. You've got a player who has just been criminally underutilised on the bench. I mean, what's the point in signing him? There's no point in actually spending sort of 8 to 10 million quid on a player of that quality when he just never gets in. Daniel Farke has to start rotating. He has to be less stubborn, and we all have belief in him. We all have belief in this squad. But my message is just release that handbrake even more than you have done all this season. I think we'll get a real profitable Leeds United. Guys, that's going to be it from me. Catch me on the debrief tonight with a couple of guests who I'm sure you're very familiar of. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll see you in a bit.